The large ship named Harmonious Unity floated among the stars, its gleaming hull reflecting the distant suns as it carried diplomats from across the galaxy. Inside the communications room, Ambassador Kim sat at his station, his blue skin contrasting with the silver console before him. The Eleran's two thin antennae extended from his forehead, occasionally twitching as he monitored the countless signals that flowed through space. Kim had served the Galactic Council for over 20 years, but most days were quiet, formal communications between worlds, trade agreements, and cultural exchanges. Today felt different somehow. He sensed it even before his equipment detected anything unusual. "Ambassador, incoming transmission," said his assistant Joe, her voice calm but with an edge of concern. "It's using emergency protocols I haven't seen before." Kim's antennae straightened in alarm as the message began playing. The view screen showed a female Viridian, her gray-scaled face marked with exhaustion and fear. Behind her, warning lights flashed and distant explosions could be heard. "This is Chief Scientist Nari of Viridia Prime. Our colony is under attack by Krell warships. They appeared without warning 3 days ago. Our planetary shields are failing. We have children here, civilians. We've only achieved space travel in the last decade. We cannot defend ourselves against this. Please, anyone who can hear this message, help us." The transmission cut to static, then began replaying automatically. Kim felt a chill run through him. The Viridians were peaceful researchers who had only recently developed faster-than-light travel. Their world was rich in rare minerals and biological compounds, which explained the Krell interest. The Krell Dominion was known throughout the galaxy as conquerors and resource harvesters who showed no mercy to those they deemed weaker. "Alert the Council immediately," Kim told Joe, his voice steady despite his racing heart. "Send them the full transmission." Within 2 hours, the Council chamber was filled with representatives from 23 spacefaring civilizations. The Viridian message played on the large central display as murmurs filled the room. "The Krell have 50 warships surrounding Viridia Prime," said Representative Song of the Altarian Federation, her holographic form flickering slightly. "Our scans confirm their planetary shields will fail within days." "This is tragic," said Councillor Han, the elderly Proximan delegate, his voice heavy with regret. "But intervention would risk bringing Krell aggression upon our own worlds." Kim's watched in growing frustration as the debate continued for hours. The Muldarians suggested a formal complaint. The Jaxiri recommended economic sanctions. The Proximan delegation proposed offering refugee status to any Viridians who escaped, but no one, not one of the galaxy's most advanced civilizations, proposed direct intervention. "We cannot match Krell military technology," explained Admiral Wu of the Altarian fleet. "Their weapon systems are designed specifically for warfare, while our vessels are primarily scientific and diplomatic." As night fell and the chamber slowly emptied, Kim remained at his seat, staring at the frozen image of the frightened Viridian scientist. A strange anger built within him. Anger at the Council's hesitation, at their fear, at their willingness to let an innocent world fall to save themselves from possible future conflict. Near midnight, when only a few delegates remained, in the chamber, Kim made his decision. "Computer, prepare to broadcast on all frequencies, all languages, all formats," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Ambassador, such an action requires Council approval," the computer responded. Kim placed his palm on the authorization. "Scanner. Emergency protocol Kim 75 override approved." The computer hesitated for just a moment before responding. "Override accepted. Broadcast ready." Kim took a deep breath. What he was about to do might end his diplomatic career, but he couldn't stand by and do nothing. "This is Ambassador Kim of the Galactic Council. I am retransmitting an emergency distress call from the planet Viridia Prime, currently under siege by Krell Dominion forces. Their planetary shields will fail within days. They have requested immediate assistance. The coordinates follow." He paused, then added words that weren't in any diplomatic handbook. "They have children there. They cannot defend themselves. They need help now." Kim sent the broadcast spiraling outward across every communication channel in use throughout the galaxy. The message would reach hundreds of worlds, including many frontier planets not represented in the Council. It was a desperate act, but he had no other options. "Transmission complete," said the computer. Kim slumped back in his chair, suddenly, exhausted. He had done all he could. Now all that remained was to wait and see if anyone would answer. What he didn't know was that his message had already reached a small blue planet on the edges of the galaxy, a world considered primitive by Council standards, whose people had only recently mastered space travel beyond their solar system. A world whose history was filled with terrible wars, but also incredible acts of courage. A world whose people, despite their divisions, held to one principle above all others. When someone calls for help, you answer, Earth. In just 72 hours, Ambassador Kim would discover what happened when humans heard a cry for help from across the stars. 3 days passed with crushing silence. Ambassador Kim had barely slept, constantly checking for responses to his broadcast while avoiding the angry summons from Council leadership. When his console finally chimed with an incoming transmission, he nearly knocked over his cup of bitter LRT in his rush to answer. "This is Captain Park of the United Earth Defense Force. We've received your distress signal. We're coming." The message was simple, direct, and in slightly accented galactic standard. Kim stared at the console in confusion. Earth? The humans were responding? They were barely a Class 3 civilization, having only achieved faster than light travel within the last 15 years. Most council members considered them primitive, volatile, and best left to develop in isolation. Kim quickly forwarded the transmission to council headquarters. Within an hour, an emergency session had been called. Humans? Council leader Tay's hologram flickered with static as she spoke. They have no business involving themselves in galactic security matters. Before anyone could respond, the station's proximity alarms blared. Kim rushed to the observation deck along with dozens of other diplomats. What they saw left them speechless. 15 ships of varying sizes and designs dropped out of faster-than-light travel near the station. They were clearly human vessels, blocky, utilitarian, and lacking the elegant lines of council ships. Some showed signs of hasty repairs and modifications, but most striking were the weapons systems visible on their hulls, not scientific equipment hastily converted for defense, but genuine military hardware. "Human vessels, this is Galactic Council Station 7, the traffic controller announced. Please state your intentions." The largest ship bearing the name Daihak on its hull in human script responded immediately. "This is Captain Park of the Earth vessel Daihak, requesting permission to dock and discuss the Viridian situation." 2 hours later, Kim found himself seated in Conference Room B along with the Emergency Council delegation. Across the table sat 5 humans in dark blue uniforms. Their captain, a woman with short black hair and calm eyes, introduced herself as Captain Sun Hai Park. "Earth appreciates being informed of the situation," Park said without preamble. "We're preparing to assist Viridia Prime immediately." Council leader Tay's hologram flickered as she leaned forward. "Captain Park, while we appreciate your enthusiasm, this situation is beyond your capabilities. The Krell have 50 warships surrounding Viridia. You have 15 vessels." One of the humans, a tall man with a weathered face who had been introduced as Commander Ryu, actually smiled at this. "Ma'am, with respect, those aren't very bad odds." A murmur ran through the council members. Kim couldn't tell if the humans were being serious or if this was some strange form of humor. "Perhaps you don't understand," Admiral Wu said slowly. "The Krell possess quantum disruption cannons, neural shock weapons, and ships with regenerative hull technology. They've conquered 17 worlds in the last century alone." "We've studied the transmission data," Captain Park replied calmly. "We believe we've identified several weaknesses in their formation and ship design." "From a single distress transmission?" someone asked in disbelief. Park didn't answer directly. Instead, she pulled out a small projector and placed it on the table. A 3-dimensional map of the Viridian system appeared, with Krell ships marked in red. "Their command ship is here," she said, pointing. "Their formation suggests standard encirclement tactics, but they've left this approach vector with minimal coverage, probably because it faces a stellar radiation belt." "That radiation would fry any ship's navigation systems," Admiral Wu objected. Commander Ryu shrugged. "We've modified our shields. We'll manage." For nearly an hour, the humans outlined their plan. The council members grew increasingly uncomfortable as they realized these newcomers to galactic society weren't just talking about intervention. They had a detailed battle strategy ready. "This is madness," Council Leader Tay finally said. "You're outnumbered more than 3 to 1. Your technology is decades behind the Krell, and you have no stake in this conflict." Captain Park's expression changed for the first time since entering the room. Something hardened in her eyes. "No stake?" she asked quietly. "They asked for help. That's stake enough." "Your species has barely left its solar system," Tay pressed. "You don't understand galactic politics or the consequences. We understand that people are dying," Park interrupted, her voice still calm but with an edge of steel beneath it. "We understand that in 3 days, no one else has offered to help them." An uncomfortable silence fell over the room. Kim felt a strange mixture of shame and admiration. "Captain," he said finally, "the Krell are merciless. If you interfere, they may target Earth next." Park looked at him directly. "Ambassador, humanity's history is filled with people who looked away because helping was dangerous. We try not to be those people anymore." She stood, and her officers followed suit. "We appreciate the Council's concern," she said formally, "but we've made our decision. My ships leave for the Viridian system in 30 minutes. We'd welcome any Council vessels that wish to join us." As the humans filed out, Kim caught fragments of conversation between 2 of their officers. "Hope this goes better than the Proxima incident," the younger one said. "Everything goes better than the Proxima incident," Commander Ryu replied with a short laugh. "Besides, these Krell haven't met humans before. They won't know what hit them." Kim watched them go, these strange beings from a distant planet who were willing to face impossible odds for people they had never met. For the first time in decades of diplomatic service, he felt something he hadn't expected: hope. When the council meeting resumed, Kim shocked everyone by requesting permission to join the human fleet as an observer. Because sometimes, he realized, you had to see things firsthand to truly understand them, and he wanted very much to understand these humans. The 15 human ships tore through the fabric of space, leaving the swirling blue tunnel of faster-than-light travel behind as they emerged at the edge of the Viridian system. From the bridge of the flagship Daihac, Captain Park watched the main view screen with steady eyes as the scene unfolded before them. "Status report," she ordered, her voice cutting through the tense silence. Lieutenant Lee bent over his tactical station, fingers dancing across the glowing controls. His face, illuminated by the blue light from the console, showed no fear, only concentration. "Confirming 50 Krell vessels in attack formation around Viridia Prime," Lee reported. "They're bombarding the planetary shields with continuous fire. Shield integrity at 23% and falling." Park nodded once, absorbing the information. "Life signs on the planet?" "Nearly 4 billion, Captain, mostly concentrated in underground shelters." Ambassador Kim stood at the back of the bridge, gripping the railing so tightly his knuckles had turned pale blue. He had insisted on coming along despite the Council's objections, claiming he needed to observe and report back. In truth, he couldn't bear to sit safely at the station while others risked their lives. "This is worse than we thought," he whispered. "They're going to break through any minute." Commander Ryu, standing beside the captain's chair, gave him a sidelong glance. "Don't worry, Ambassador. We made good time." Park pressed a button on her chair. "All ships maintain current position. Passive scans only. Let's see if they notice us before we announce ourselves." They didn't have to wait long. Within minutes, one of the Krell ships broke away from the formation and began moving toward them. "They've spotted us," Lee said, tension edging into his voice. "The ship approaching is twice our size, heavy weaponry, shields at maximum." Park nodded. "Let them come." The Krell vessel grew larger on the view screen, its black hull covered with weapon ports and strange pulsing red lights. It was shaped like a giant arrowhead, designed for intimidation as much as function. "Incoming transmission," called out Communications Officer June from her station. "On screen," Park ordered. The view screen flickered and a Krell commander appeared. The alien was massive, with thick gray skin and small, deep-set eyes that glowed orange against the dark bridge behind him. Multiple metal implants protruded from his skull, connected by glowing circuitry that pulsed with each breath. "Unidentified vessels," the Krell commander rumbled, his voice translated by the ship's computer. "You have entered a restricted military zone. Identify yourselves." Park stood slowly, her uniform crisp despite the long journey. "This is Captain Sun-Hai Park of the Earth Defense Force. We are responding to a distress call from Viridia Prime, the E." Krell commander's eyes narrowed, then widened in what might have been surprise. "Earth? The primitive world from Sector 92? The translator couldn't quite capture the contempt in his voice, but it was clear nonetheless. "That's correct," Park replied evenly. The Krell made a sound that might have been laughter. 15 vessels. Is this all your world could muster?" His massive shoulders shifted as he leaned closer to the screen. "Leave now, primitives, and you may yet live. This is not your concern." Kim felt his heart sink. The Krell commander was right. 15 ships against 50 was suicide. He looked around the bridge, expecting to see the humans wilting under the threat. Instead, he saw something that startled him. Not one of them appeared afraid. If anything, some of them, like the grizzled Commander Ryu, seemed almost eager with "Respect," Park said, her voice calm. "We're making it our concern." The Krell commander's facial ridges flushed dark with anger. "You do not understand what you face, human. The Krell Dominion has conquered worlds for centuries. Your species has barely left its own solar system." Park's expression didn't change. "True. But there's something you should know about humans." "Commander, and what is that?" the Krell growled. "We learn fast." Park cut the transmission with a gesture and turned to her crew. "All ships, deploy Formation Delta. Lieutenant Lee, target their command ship's port shield generators. Communications. Broadcast to all Krell vessels that they have 30 seconds to cease their attack on Viridia Prime and withdraw." "And if they refuse?" Kim asked quietly. Park's eyes met his. "Then we show them how primitives fight when someone needs help." The bridge erupted into focused activity as orders were relayed and positions confirmed. Kim watched in amazement as the human fleet suddenly broke apart, each ship moving with perfect coordination despite their varied sizes and designs. "They're launching fighters," Lee reported, as small craft began pouring from several Krell vessels. "Counting over 200 small craft incoming," Ryu grinned. "Right on schedule. Release the drones." From the belly of each human ship, dozens of small, unmanned craft shot into space, their engines blazing blue against the blackness. "What are those?" Kim asked, pointing at the screen. "Electronic warfare drones," Ryu explained. "The Krell rely heavily on networked targeting systems. Our drones carry special jammers designed to disrupt their coordination." On the view screen, the first wave of Krell fighters suddenly began veering off course, some colliding with each other, as their navigation systems went haywire. "It's working," Lee reported, unable to keep the excitement from his voice. "Their fighters are losing formation integrity." Park nodded once. "Begin Phase 2. All ships, weapons free. Target the designated weak points." Kim watched in astonishment as the human vessels began moving in complex patterns, seemingly random but clearly coordinated. The larger Krell ships tried to track them, but couldn't seem to lock onto the constantly moving targets. "How did you know their weaknesses?" Kim asked, unable to contain his curiosity. "We've been studying their transmissions for years," Park replied, without taking her eyes off the battle. "And we noticed something everyone else missed. Their ships are designed to intimidate through size, but they sacrifice maneuverability. They expect enemies to run or surrender. We're not big on either option," Ryu added with a grim smile. The Dayhak shuddered as it took a glancing hit from a Krell destroyer. Park didn't flinch. "Fire main batteries," she ordered. "Show them what happens when you push humans into a corner." As the human ships unleashed their weapons, Kim realized he was witnessing something unprecedented. The first species in living memory to stand against the Krell Dominion with a genuine chance of victory. And somehow, against all logic, he believed they might actually win. The shuttle bay of the Dayhak hummed with activity as Commander Choi checked his team's equipment one final time. 12 men and women in black combat suits stood at attention, their faces focused beneath helmet visors. Each carried a compact pulse rifle and at least 3 sidearms. "This isn't a standard operation," Choi reminded them, his voice calm despite the gravity of their mission. "We board the Krell command ship, locate their leader, and capture him alive. No heroics, no revenge. Just in and out." Specialist Jin adjusted her tactical gloves. "Sir, the Krell are twice our size and 3 times our strength. How exactly are we supposed to take their commander alive?" Choi allowed himself a small smile. "They're stronger, yes? But we're faster, and we have something they don't have." He tapped the side of his head. "We adapt." The shuttle doors closed with a hiss as Captain Park's voice came through their comms. "Commander, your window opens in 2 minutes. Good hunting." Outside, the battle had reached a fever pitch. The human fleet, though outnumbered, moved like a single organism, darting between the hulking Krell ships, firing precisely at shield generators and weapons arrays before speeding away. The Krell, accustomed to enemies who either fled or engaged in predictable frontal assaults, struggled to counter the human tactics. "They're expecting us to fight like everyone else in the galaxy," Lieutenant Lee had explained during the briefing. "Nobody told them humans wrote the book on asymmetric warfare." As their shuttle launched from the Dahak, Choi watched 2 human destroyers execute a maneuver that should have been impossible, accelerating directly toward a Krell cruiser before splitting apart at the last second, each vessel skimming along opposite sides of the enemy ship while firing continuously at its weapon ports. "Radiation levels rising," announced the shuttle pilot, "entering the belt in 10 seconds. The shuttle shuddered as it plunged into the stellar radiation belt that the Krell had used as a natural barrier. Any normal ship's navigation systems would fail here, which is precisely why the humans had modified theirs to use old-fashioned gyroscopic guidance instead of standard quantum positioning. "They won't see us coming," the pilot said with quiet confidence. "Their sensors are blind here." 30 seconds later, they emerged from the radiation directly behind the massive Krell command ship. Its rear docking bay, usually protected by its position at the center of the fleet, was exposed. "Beginning docking sequence," the pilot announced. "Commander, you'll have 90 seconds to breach before their visual scanners pick us up." Choi nodded. "More than enough time." The moment the shuttle touched down, the boarding team moved. 3 specialists attached breaching charges to the inner doorway, while Choi and the rest formed a protective semicircle. The charges detonated with a muffled thump, the sound absorbed by emergency containment fields. "Move," Choi ordered. And the team flowed through the smoking doorway like water. The first 2 Krell guards never had a chance to raise their weapons. Specialist Jin fired 2 precision shots that struck the neural implants protruding from their skulls, a weakness the humans had identified from analyzing the distress call footage. The massive aliens collapsed, momentarily paralyzed but alive. "Corridor clear," Jin reported. "Map is accurate so far. They moved through the Krell ship with practiced efficiency, using smoke grenades and sound disruptors to create confusion. Unlike the brutish frontal assaults the Krell expected, the humans slipped through maintenance tunnels and air ducts, bypassing heavily defended areas entirely. "Command deck, 2 levels up," Choi murmured into his comm. "Team 2, create a diversion. In the engine room, Team 1 with me." Across the human fleet, the battle continued to unfold in humanity's favor. The Krell ships, built for power rather than agility, couldn't track the smaller, faster human vessels. More importantly, the Krell commanders couldn't adapt to human tactics quickly enough. On the Dahak's bridge, Captain Park watched as another Krell cruiser lost power to its main weapons. "Their formation is breaking," Lieutenant Lee reported. 3 of their ships are pulling back. Ambassador Kim stared at the tactical display in disbelief. "This is impossible. No one defeats the Krell in direct combat." Park's expression remained calm. "The Krell have been unopposed for so long they've forgotten how to face an enemy who isn't afraid of them." On the command ship, Choi's team encountered increasingly desperate resistance. Krell soldiers charged them in the narrow corridors, only to be outmaneuvered by the smaller, quicker humans. "Commander, we've located their leader," Jin reported, checking her scanner. "Large chamber ahead. At least 20 guards." Choi nodded. "Deploy the sonics." 5 small devices clattered across the floor into the command center. A heartbeat later, they activated, emitting a frequency that interacted catastrophically with the Krell neural implants. The alien warriors clutched their heads and collapsed, their enhanced senses becoming a liability. The human team surged forward, weapons ready. At the center of the chamber, a massive Krell commander, larger than the others with more elaborate implants, struggled to remain standing. "Commander," Choi called out in translated Krell, "order your fleet to stand down, or this ends badly. For you," the Krell leader snarled, revealing rows of pointed teeth. "Humans, you are nothing. Vermin. We will crush." Jin fired a precision shot that struck the control panel beside him, showering the Krell commander with sparks. That was a warning. The next one deactivates those fancy implants keeping you alive. For perhaps the first time in his long life, the Krell commander faced an enemy he couldn't intimidate. He looked from the determined humans to the tactical display showing his disintegrating fleet. "You fight. Unlike any species we have encountered," he growled. "That's because we spent thousands of years fighting ourselves," Choi replied evenly. "Now order your fleet to withdraw, or we'll see what happens when we remove those implants." On the planet's surface, billions of Viridians huddled in underground shelters, watching through remote sensors as the battle unfolded above them. They had expected their final hours to be spent in terror as the Krell breached their shields. Instead, they witnessed something miraculous. The Krell fleet, undefeated for centuries, was retreating. "They're breaking formation completely," one Viridian scientist whispered. "Look, they're actually running away." As the massive alien ships began jumping to faster-than-light speed, leaving their defeated commander behind, the Viridians erupted in cheers and disbelieving laughter. From the safety of the Council observation post, diplomatic representatives watched in stunned silence. The humans, dismissed as primitive, ignored as irrelevant, had done what the combined might of the galaxy's oldest civilizations had deemed impossible. "We should revise our classification of Earth," one council member suggested quietly. "Perhaps they are not so primitive after all." The transport ship descended through Earth's atmosphere, giving Ambassador Kim his first glimpse of the human homeworld. Blue oceans stretched across much of the planet's surface, dotted with green and brown. Land masses and swirling white clouds. It looked peaceful from orbit, nothing like what he'd expected from a species capable of defeating the Krell. "First time seeing Earth?" asked the human pilot, noticing Kim's fixed gaze out the viewport. "Yes," the Aloran replied, his antennae twitching with excitement. "It's smaller than I imagined," the pilot laughed. "That's what everyone says." 2 weeks had passed since the battle at Viridia Prime. The news had spread across the galaxy faster than any ship could travel. Humans, a species barely known beyond their own star system, had stood against the Krell Dominion and won. The Council, initially shocked into silence, was now buzzing with debate about what this meant for galactic power structures that had remained unchanged for centuries. Kim had requested this visit to Earth personally. He needed to understand these humans, to see where they came from, what shaped them. The Council had agreed, appointing him special envoy to Earth with instructions to learn everything he could about humanity's military capabilities. But Kim had different questions in mind. The transport touched down at a coastal spaceport. Through the windows, Kim could see the vast Pacific Ocean stretching to the horizon, its waves catching the afternoon sunlight. A small welcoming party waited on the landing pad. Just 3 people, a modest reception compared to the formal ceremonies other worlds would have arranged. Captain Park stood at the center, wearing a formal blue uniform rather than her battle gear. She smiled as Kim descended the ramp. "Ambassador," she greeted him, extending her hand in the human custom. "Welcome to Earth." Kim took her hand carefully, still not entirely comfortable with physical contact as a greeting. "Captain, thank you for agreeing to meet with me. Please call me Sun High, I'm off duty." They traveled by ground vehicle along a coastal road, giving Kim views of both the ocean and the city. He was surprised by the variety. Gleaming modern towers stood alongside older buildings of stone and wood. People moved about on foot, on small-wheeled devices and in vehicles. It seemed chaotic compared to the carefully planned cities of council worlds. "Your world has much diversity," Kim observed. Park nodded. "We've never been good at agreeing on one way to do things." They arrived at a government building perched on a cliff overlooking the ocean. Unlike the grand, imposing structures favored by most spacefaring species, this building was mostly glass, allowing natural light to flood the interior. A small meeting room had been prepared with refreshments suitable for Eleran physiology. Floor-to-ceiling windows revealed a panoramic view of the Pacific, where the sun was beginning to set, painting the water in shades of gold and red. After they were seated, Kim decided to forego diplomatic pleasantries. "Why did you do it?" he asked, directly. "Why risk your ships, your people, for strangers halfway across the galaxy?" Park seemed unsurprised by the question. She considered it for a moment before answering. "Have you studied Earth history, Ambassador?" Kim's antennae drooped slightly in embarrassment. "I'm afraid not. The Council has limited information on human development." Park nodded. "For most of our history, we fought ourselves. Tribe against tribe, nation against nation. We nearly destroyed ourselves more than once." She gazed out at the ocean. "The last century has been difficult. Climate disasters, resource wars, pandemics. Yet you survived," Kim noted. "We did more than survive," Park replied. "We learned. When the flooding came, countries that had been enemies for generations suddenly found themselves sending rescue teams across borders. When the crop failures hit, nations shared food technology that they'd previously guarded as state secrets." She turned back to face him. "Throughout our history, we've known suffering. We've fought ourselves more than anyone. But we've always held one truth. When someone calls for help, you answer. Not because they can repay you, but because someday it might be you calling into the darkness." Kim sat in silence, absorbing her words. It was such a simple principle, yet it had driven these humans to challenge the galaxy's most feared power. "The Council believes you acted to establish yourselves as a military power," he admitted. "There are concerns about human expansion." Park actually laughed at this. "We have our hands full keeping peace on one planet, Ambassador. We're not looking to conquer the galaxy." "Then what do you want?" Kim asked, genuinely curious. "To help where we can, to learn, to be good neighbors." She shrugged. "It's not complicated." But it was, Kim realized. In a galaxy where species had spent millennia carefully calculating advantage and risk, where aid was given only when benefits outweighed costs, the human approach was revolutionary. Over the next 3 days, Kim toured Earth cities, visited human scientific facilities, and met with their leaders. Everywhere he went, he was struck by contrasts: technological marvels alongside ancient traditions, fierce independence alongside deep community bonds. On his final evening, a reception was held at Earth's Space Defense Headquarters. Commander Choi, now something of a legend across the galaxy, showed Kim the memorial wall where humans honored those who had died in service. "4 of our people didn't make it back from Viridia Prime," Choi said quietly. "We knew the risks." "Do you regret going?" Kim asked. Choi seemed surprised by the question. "No, never." He gestured toward a live feed showing Viridia Prime, where cleanup and rebuilding were already underway. 4 lives lost, billions saved. Any human would make that trade. As Kim prepared to depart Earth the next morning, news arrived that sent ripples through the galactic community. 3 more worlds under Krell control had risen up against their oppressors, inspired by what had happened at Viridia Prime, and each had sent distress signals specifically requesting Earth's assistance. "Will you answer them?" Kim asked Park. As they stood at the spaceport, she smiled, watching as crews prepared a fleet of ships larger than before, with volunteers from across Earth eager to join the effort. "Like I said, Ambassador, where we come from, you never ignore a distress call." As Kim's transport lifted off, he looked down at the blue planet growing smaller beneath him. The Council had sent him to assess a potential threat. Instead, he'd found something the galaxy had been missing for a very long time: hope. In the weeks that followed, the story of humanity's stand against the Krell spread to every corner of the galaxy. Worlds that had suffered in silence for generations began to call out, and Earth, though new to the galactic stage, prepared to answer every call. The humans were coming, and the galaxy would never be the same.